Will, thank you for picking up the phone. We know that this is difficult for everyone. The whole city of Chicago is mourning the loss of Stacey King. How are you feeling today?
It's I think today was the day where it just kind of really hit. Yesterday, when I found out about it, I didn't believe it at first, even though more than one person told me, so I had to look it up myself. And then, I guess last night I really didn't sleep well because as I was going to bed, I was kind of seeing some of the tributes on social media, and I started went down that rabbit hole and didn't really sleep too well. But, today with everything you guys have had on and some other interviews that I've done, over the last couple hours, it's one of those things, now it's a reality. Now it's set in. But, one of the things I've tried to do in this whole process was, and I was listening to you guys when you first came on in the transition, as you guys have even talked about, it's just try to focus on the good things. I mean, how unfortunate this is, how young he was. There's nothing we can do to change that. But I think, as you guys talked about, just remembering the good things and the humor of Stacey King and the impact that he had, on this city as he was calling games is, I think, something that he'll always be remembered for.
It's beautiful, Will, and the efforts by you and others to get through the emotions or incorporate the emotions into the remembrance are valuable. So we appreciate it. I was reading Sam Smith on NBA.com, and the way that he talked about the rookie year for Stacey King and for B.J. Armstrong, both chosen in that same draft, was really thought about as a trio with you as the third because you'd only played 30 games in that season before. And we just heard Stacy kind of referring to that. So did you feel like you were in the same draft class in some way? And what was it like to be side by side with a young and vibrant Stacey King?
Yeah, actually I did. I mean, unfortunately I did because, my rookie year I did think about changing the name on the back of my jersey to DNPCD. But, it's just – I got drafted when they had Bill Cartwright and Dave Corzine, two very established post players. So needless to say, I was very excited for that second season. They bring in Stacy, they bring in BJ, quality guys. BJ was somebody I had gotten to know during my college time frame, doing some Team USA stuff. But, I think the thing that really stands out about Stacy, the player, was, Stacy always made the joke that the only player that can control me or hold me down is Phil Jackson. I think he truly believed that, even though he humorously said that. But as you guys were talking about during that transition phase, once he accepted that reduced role, and that was hard for him. That was hard for all of us, right? Not just him, but that's when I think he finally kind of found his stride when he was with the Bulls, was when he realized, okay, I may not have the same NBA career that I had, its college career, but I've got to find a way to be impactful on this team because, the depth we had was outstanding. And if you don't figure this out, you're not going to play. And everybody wants to play because everybody has an ego. But I just loved competing against Stacy, how he played. And also, it's kind of interesting. When you play against a lefty, it's just different. So that's kind of when I used to love playing against him, was practicing against him, was how competitive it was. But also less on the second unit. You think about the guys that didn't play a lot of minutes. We would stay afterwards and play 2-on-2, 3-on-3 for hours. And it got pretty heated at times, but that's also, again, what made us so good and helped us get better as players that weren't necessarily playing a lot of minutes.
Stacy at Oklahoma was graceful, fast, like
the guy.
And athletic and like end to end. And then it felt like with you guys, he ended up having to like body up on some big people because you needed somebody to, because Horace was graceful and could go end to end, and Scotty was graceful and go end to end. You think Stacy? I wonder what Stacy's career would have been like if he'd had a chance right from the get go to be I don't know, more athletic, more fluid, the guy in that way.
You mean play in this era?
Yeah, that's true, right? He'd fit better in this era than that one.
Yeah, and I think that's, the one thing that, my college coach always told me was you can't teach height, right? And back then, in the 90s, you played inside out. So the one thing that Jerry Krause always said, and Phil Jackson was in the same boat, they didn't agree on a lot, but you can't have enough depth when it comes to power forwards and centers. Because, Pat Riley said it, everybody agrees with it. Championships were won with defense and rebounding. And we needed guys that could do both of those. And Phil, as you heard in the open, did not hesitate to occasionally wing it and try something with his gut, right? And put out his – was that you that actually asked that question, Speaks?
To Phil?
Yeah, about the lineup that he went with BJ and Hansen, and it sounded like you. I wasn't sure.
No.
But you know how he talked about the team needed something different and energy. And so Phil always had that luxury of looking down the bench and seeing all these big guys and, well, let me try Scott, let me try Will, let me try Stacy, let me try, so he had that luxury. But I agree with you. If Stacy would be playing now, he would probably be more of a version of a Dirk Nowitzki than a guy that had to become a bruiser, a body guy. Let's not forget, probably, I don't know if you want to call it a highlight, a low light, was with something snapped in Stacy one of the games. And I'm sure you guys all remember when, because, as Steve Kerr would say, one hard foul begets another, when he chased down Danny Ferry when he was with Cleveland.
Yes.
And Stacy made it known to all of us. He goes, I'm going to get that BITCH, and he did.
Oh, man.
Well, obviously winning championships means a lot to people, but there's also a responsibility that goes along with it. Like, you guys have won titles, and being championship Bulls means something. And I feel like almost all of you guys have done a great job of playing the role of ambassador. So let me ask you, why was it important to you, and why was Stacy so good at it?
It's funny you bring that up, Lawrence, because I actually called Stacy to talk to him about that because, I was doing national stuff, and he got many of national offers himself, but he turned them down. But I remember I was doing stuff for ESPN and SEC Network and Westwood One and, doing all this stuff. And I kind of wanted to get back into the Chicago market. And I actually reached out to Stacy because at the time he was with Mark Shanowski doing pre-half and post, right? And he just had kind of talked about how he just felt the love from the fans of winning all those championships. And even though he wasn't from Chicago, he said he just felt like that was his home. And he wanted to live here. He wanted to stay here. And he wanted to, as we talked about, kind of give back in some way, shape, or form. Because even to this day, we still talk about it in the sense that, at the golf course, at Mariano's, at the dry cleaners, wherever it may be, somebody will come up and just reminisce about the championship years. And that gives you a sense of pride. And I think Stacy felt that. And that's where he found his niche. Talked to John Paxson earlier today, and we talked about how, when we started flying charter, it was me, Pax, BJ, Bill Cartwright, Stacy, Eddie Neely sat up in the front of the plane, the non-card playing guys. And Stacy just used to keep us entertained. And the one thing about Stacy was he could give it, but he could also take it. And for whatever reason, Stacy decided to bring a video of him playing at Oklahoma and show, because I guess MJ, how MJ is, he would ride guys. And I think Stacy felt, all right, I'm gonna bring some receipts here. I'm gonna bring this tape of me playing at Oklahoma. And he put it on the video thing, and of course he forgets it plays through the whole plane, right? So MJ comes walking up and, what is this crap? Right? And he goes, this is me. And he goes, well, when are we going to get that guy? Right? But it was just, and Stacy wasn't hesitant. He'd fire right back. He wasn't afraid. He didn't care who it was. But, I mean, he just kept, I talked to BJ last night. The minute he stepped on that plane, he was like a comedian, man. He was on. Like, hey, boy. He just had this attitude. And I heard you guys talking about the story about he went to get the chicken and, the whole thing. And it just, Stacy was one of those guys that he would tell stories and you'd stop for a second and go, is that real? Or was that just for effect? What's going on here? Because he, as you guys talk about, he became the ultimate showman. And the one thing I've continued to say over these last 24 hours is, as you guys talk about the sayings, the hot sauce, did you not get the memo, the whole thing, right? But let's also talk about, as you guys mentioned, how good he was of breaking things down and making it understandable for the average fan, not somebody that played at the NBA or in college. Because sometimes we could get on there and do a great job describing something, but the average fan, or maybe somebody that's not a huge basketball fan but is involved in the Bulls, will be like, what did he just say? And Stacy did, and in my opinion, did a really nice job with the telestrator, explaining it in a very simple form. And I always did love, though, occasionally when he got a little fed up and over the top and kind of went on some of his rants, which I think he may or may not have had somebody mention something to him about that, but he was always a blast to listen to. And I, even when he became the color guy, I learned things from him about how to describe stuff, how to look at plays differently.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that obvious knowledge and expertise made the fun even more palatable. It wasn't just him doing a bit to cover up for not being able to talk hoops. He could just hang out and talk hoops. How cool is it that Will Perdue spoke to John Paxson this morning, spoke to B.J. Armstrong last night? Who else? I mean, that's a beautiful thing that happens sometimes when someone passes, is that his friends get in touch.
Well, it's just we're on a thread with Cliff Livingston, Scottie Pippen. Who else is on there? Scott Williams. It's just, I think there's 7 or 8 of us. And the first thing that somebody put out in that group was, stunned, but it's a brotherhood. We watch out for each other. And, there's been some times where guys have, in my opinion, kind of spoken out of place. But the one thing that we always had, and one thing we always did, was we always had each other's back. I mean, Lawrence, because you've been around since day one, and you used to know how heated the practices would get, plenty of fights. But that's what made us so good. But at the end of the day, we all had our differences, but when we crossed that line and stepped on the court, we always had each other's backs. And occasionally things got personal, but it's instances like this that remind us that, we were brothers, we watched out for each other, and, ultimately we're able to put our differences aside when it's necessary.
Will, and we're talking about Will Perdue here on The Score. You connect with the audience. When you're doing television, you connect. Kendall connects with the audience really well. You guys were masterful when you were doing posts together. Stacy is in a different world because it's being the color commentator. But I'd just love to know, as someone that now you're a veteran broadcaster, when you look at what Stacy was as a broadcaster, why do you think he connected with the audience the way that he did? Because the outpouring of affection for him today is in large part because of that connection. So as someone who's seeing it happen in real time, when you would be in the studio, what was it that you think drew people to wanting to know Stacy's opinion?
I think because he was entertaining, first and foremost. Because I heard you guys talking about you guys were talking about certain guys were tacticians, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned all the names that you mentioned, as Lawrence said, those were all play-by-play guys, right? And Stacy was a guy that kind of, and I heard the piece from Neil Funk about the Derrick Rose is when he learned that he was no longer the leader, he was the follower, right?
He's in the passenger chair.
That's right. But he just had this, and I'll flip the script for a second. He just had this way to, it's almost like I think you talked about, Lawrence, where you just had this vision that people were responding to what he was saying and were talking to the television, right? Like they were having a conversation with a friend. And that's an art form. But I kind of have mentioned, I think Stacy was just as big as that team that he was calling when it had Derrick Rose and Kirk Heinrich and Joakim Noah and Luau Deng. I mean, if you talk to people, I think they would throw Stacy's name in there like he was one of the players. Because I think you had that team, but then that team was made bigger than life because of Stacy. And then Stacy was made bigger than life because of the players. And it was just almost like the perfect storm of that group of players and Stacy. And that's where, he set the mark. And then he kept those standards. Even when the team wasn't really that good, you still heard a lot of people would watch the Bulls because they wanted to listen to Stacey King.
Will Perdue, thanks so much for the time, man. And thanks for doing what you're doing to help people understand and appreciate Stacy at this moment. We appreciate you.
Can I tell one more story?
Sure, absolutely.
Your dime, your dance floor.
All right, so I heard, you had Scotty telling the chicken story, right? So I'll tell another story so we can get a good laugh. But I personally believe this was intentional. So one day Stacy was late for practice, right? And kind of like that golf guy a couple of weeks ago at the PGA Championship, right? You had to be, when practice started at 10, it was 10:00, not 10, 30 seconds, 8 seconds, whatever, right? Stacy came running in, shoes untied, he was late. He's like, oh, my God. Oh, sorry. Did I make it? Nope, you're late. He's like, oh, man, what happened? Well, the power went out, and I couldn't open up my garage door, so I couldn't get the car out of the garage. I couldn't get to practice. And everybody just busted out laughing, and somebody went, you do know that little handle on the thing, right? You just pull it down. And then you just manually lift the door up, and he was like, what? That's what that is?
Did you buy it? Do you buy it now?
Well, he still got fined, but at the time, he's a rookie, right? I didn't really, or maybe that was his second year, but I at that point, I'm still learning about Stacy the person. I knew Stacy the player, and I was like, yeah, I mean, at the beginning, I didn't even think twice. We were just laughing so hard, right? We're like, this guy's an idiot, But then we realized that remember when I made that comment about Stacy and being dramatic about, I'm not so sure that's how it really happened, but I think that's what happened. The power did go out, but then because he was running late, he's like, this is what I'm going to say. And that was kind of, in my opinion, the genius of Stacey King. He would come up with some stuff that was so absurd that you'd be like, what? So and that's what I mean about he knew he would catch some heat. But he was willing to throw that out there to see if he could get out of getting fined.
Oh, that is amazing. Will, you're the best, man. We appreciate you. Thank you so much.
All right, man. I appreciate you guys talking about him. And, Stacey King deserves that. And one of the things we always need to do in situations like this, everybody mourns in different ways, but I think we also need to make sure we remind ourselves to celebrate because Stacy brought us a lot of good memories. And, I know our championship teams were much-watched TV, but him and Neil and him and Adam were much must-watch TV as well.
Well said. Will Perdue joining us here to talk about his friend and our friend, Stacey King. Will, thank you very much. We appreciate it.